I'd like to introduce you to him. Andrew's going to show us around and tell us the significance of this town.
Yeah, thank you very much. I met these gentlemen last night and I was enthusiastic about what is my hometown, and I wanted to share some of the social, political and architectural aspects that weave together to make Rochdale what it is. An awful lot of people think that Rochdale was founded on cotton. Manchester, Cottonopolis, was founded on cotton. Rochdale was actually founded upon wool. And if you look behind me, what's now the Hogarth's Pub was a family residence in the 1770s when it was built. And in the early 1800s, it became the home of the Kelsall family. Henry Kelsall's second daughter married Mr. Kemp, and the company of Kelsall and Kemp was founded. A little known fact is that when she was 15 years of age, she laid the foundation stone of the Elizabeth Tower, which is where Big Ben is housed at the Houses of Parliament. The first mill was built next door on the site of what is now the Regal Moon Pub, and was opened in 1938 as the Regal Cinema. And fewer people seem to know that back in 1905, when it was still a mill, a 12-year-old girl called Sarah Butterworth was that badly beaten by her overseer that she fled to the toilets in distress and died of her wounds in there. And to this day, it's still believed that the location is haunted. As you can probably see behind me is the former Wellington Hotel, which is now known as the Bombay Brew. It's significant because it was built first of all as a residence in the late 18th century, but more notorious than that, 8,000 people gathered outside this spot after the Great Reform Act of 1838 that meant that Rochdale would have its first Member of Parliament. If I look down to the floor to the left of me, then what I'll see are wooden sets, or as some people might call them, wooden cobbles. And very few people in Rochdale are even aware of their presence, let alone people from outside. And it's the only example in the country of such a thing, the wooden sets actually in situ. And the reason why they were laid in the first place is because to my right was a TB hospital, the first ever hospital in Rochdale, and it was so that the patients would not be further distressed by the noise. As an architectural feature, in the last decade, Rochdale has actually opened up its famous river, the Roach. It was very famous if anybody actually in their earlier days possessed a copy of the Guinness Book of Records, because for where Riverside is now, which is the council offices, or some older residents might remember it as where the Yellowway coach office depot was, to where the police station is, up here next to Touchstones, it was all covered, meaning that Rochdale was in fact the widest bridge in the world. For various reasons and the weakening of the structures, it was opened up, and now it gives a particularly different feature to Rochdale. Opens it up, and also is going to be complemented by the new public square outside the town hall. Rochdale's new public square has a statue to Dame Gracie Fields, one of the most famous daughters of Rochdale. Her birth surname was Stansfield, but no relation to Rochdale's other famous daughter, who was a singer, Lisa Stansfield. In this square, in earlier times, stood the statue of John Bright, a man who we'll be visiting later. John Bright statue now resides in Broadfield Park, which is on the other side of the town hall. Behind me is St Chad's Church, which has overlooked Rochdale for near on 900 years. Usually accessible from the town centre by 110 steps from the base, because of the £20 million refurbishment of the town hall funded by the National Lottery, it's not accessible as such anymore. But one day it will be open, readily accessible, and complement the vista of Rochdale, as the town hall to my left does, with its imposing tower, which is actually its second tower because the first one was wooden and burnt down. The town hall reopened, I believe it was in something like 1889. It has a rich history though, and many people would know of Rochdale Town Hall because, as recently reported on BBC Local News, Hitler didn't want any bombs dropped on Rochdale because allegedly he had visited the town when staying with his brother in Liverpool. Some say he wanted the whole town hall shipped back to Rochdale, some say that he only wanted the stained glass taken back to Rochdale. Facing the town hall is the cenotaph, a tribute to those servicemen who gave their lives during the First and Second World Wars and in subsequent conflicts. The cenotaph in Rochdale was designed by Lutyens, who also designed the cenotaph at Whitehall in London. And what many people don't realise is that Lutyens' great uncle was the orderly to Napoleon when he was on Elba. This site of the cenotaph was originally, before it was demolished, the site of Orchard House, which served as the manor house of Rochdale for 100 years, from 1823 until 1923. The house had been occupied by the Dearden family for 150 years in total, but in 1823 they purchased the manor of Rochdale, and they purchased the manor of Rochdale from the 6th Baron Byron of Rochdale, the poet, who died a year later penniless in Greece. Often people have wondered why he should die penniless, and it turns out that all of the monies he raised from selling the manor of Rochdale, he bought munitions for the Greeks in their war of independence against the Ottomans. Here we are at the site of the Union Flag Inn, which was built in 1708, and in 1745 it was the site of a skirmish between the town authorities and the forces of Bonnie Prince Charlie. Not the first political skirmish that Rochdale has witnessed. Well, I'm just saying, 20 odd years ago, people who worked in adjoining shops saying they could hear screams at night and funny noises and nobody knew what it was actually about. And some historians done a lot of local research, and apparently upstairs in here used to be an auction room, and in the 1840s the floor collapsed and 28 people died. And who could come to Rochdale without coming to the birthplace of cooperation? The world's first successful cooperative movement opened here on the 21st of December 1844. It's been thriving ever since, but unfortunately not in Rochdale, as there's no major co-op presence here. And for a town that has no market, soon perhaps has no football club, has no McDonald's, and presently has own lock-up police cells, in the olden days when the vagrants and the drunkards couldn't be escorted due to lack of manpower down to the police cells at the bottom of the town hall, we have one of these lock-ups here behind me, which were populated around the town, where people were put in to cool off and to sober up, and not being a hindrance to the public at large. Located behind me is the grave of Rochdale's most famous son, John Bright, arguably the greatest parliamentary orator of the Victorian era, a man who was a lifelong Quaker, a man who was thrown out of Parliament because of his opposition to the Crimea War, a man who was then re-elected into Birmingham and stayed an MP until he died in 1889, a man who had a prosperous family, a man who was a mill owner, and a man who really put Rochdale on the map in those days, and a man who perhaps deserves a little better than the circumstances in which he's found today.
Andrew, thank you very much for a profound description and tour of this incredible place, Rochdale, which most people in the country have no idea of the kind of history that is here. And I would say also that probably lots of the young people who live here do not know that history.